Yeah.
All right, John, I have a question for you.
Yes.
You have your job as a linguist. Obviously, you're structuring tests.
Yeah.
Now, that combined with the fact that you live in Las Vegas, our subject today is cheating. I wanted to ask you a question in the front. Do you think if individuals have a chance to cheat, the vast majority will?
It's a good question.
Now, I don't know if I should qualify it by saying, and won't get caught. I'm saying if the opportunity arises, do individuals cheat on tests? Will they cheat at the gambling tables? What do you think?
It's interesting because at one point I developed the reading test for Nevada, and it was the grade that my kid was in at the time. And somebody asked me, well, are you... Now, I developed the items for it. I didn't actually choose them that they appeared on the test.
Right.
So it wasn't like, hey, I've got the fifth grade test here in my office. Yep. It wasn't like that. But nevertheless, people asked me, well, do you give them... I said, well, no, I would never do that because it defeats the purpose of it. Yeah. And he's not interested he's not sneaking around my office. He doesn't care. Yeah. He did extremely well on that test. And I was a little concerned that people might think that I gave him the answers or something. I thought, well, no, that would defeat the purpose of the assessment. Right. I want to see where he's at. And it's just like if you're on a diet and you're going to use the scale as seeing how successful you are. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're going to say, well, on day one, I'm going to wear my winter overcoat and my boots and everything so I can pump my weight up, so that from now on I'll start getting on the scale naked. Well, you're getting false data, right? Mm-hmm. The data is not accurate. It's not valid. Yeah. So you're really not getting a true picture of how well this diet works or how much weight you're losing, right? You're only cheating yourself.
Right.
It's interesting that in the annals, because we talk about cheating at games, yes. And I look at it as there are two different perspectives to that, right? The house will think that if you're counting cards that you're cheating. And I say that's not cheating at all. That's just good playing. Right. There's strategy to it. And of course they don't want that. That's why they pump you full of alcohol and everything. They want it to be basically gambling rather than gaming, right? Yes. Gaming implies that there's some skill to it. Like a game like poker. There is a skill to that, which is why online poker to me is just like, come on.
Yeah, it's nonsense.
It's nonsense.
Yeah, I can't stand it, yeah.
Yeah. But from the cheater's perspective, it's interesting looking at card cheaters. They don't call themselves cheaters. They're advantage players. Yeah. They're just taking advantage of the situation. That's how they look at it. So I'm just taking whatever advantage I have. So, in this case, you can apply that logic to if it's a test. Well, I don't know the answer to this question, but the kid next to me probably does because I know he's really smart. Yeah. I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I'm taller than he is. Yes. And I can look over his shoulder and see what the answer is. Yeah.
Excellent point. You looked at it from a very literal and almost scientific view. My initial reaction to when I actually asked the question is I look at it from a moral standpoint. Yeah. If there is an opportunity to cap your bet. And we're gonna discuss, quite a few methods of cheating. Capping bets is one, which is a simple one, And, would people do it? I think yes. I think they really would. However, I think based on what we saw as a concierge, I saw a lot of gaming. I helped a lot of VIPs, so did you. It seems to be, strangely, the more money people have, the more likely they were to cheat. Yeah. The lowly, everyday, dollar, blackjack player is a little intimidated and scared, and everybody, thinks, the Robert De Niro, room underneath the basement where they beat you up. Yeah. They're a little intimidated by that, and so, but then as they get more and more of a VIP, I saw giant baccarat players that they'd be a little bit in the gray area as far as what they were doing during play.
And they probably, the reason they've got that much money in the first place in order to gamble or in order to play is because probably in their everyday life that's how they got ahead. Oh, it was interesting. There was a report came out of Australia a couple of years ago, and I read that. I thought, oh, that's interesting, but it really didn't tell me anything new. It's something that I'd already seen before. Was that they estimated based on survey results and psychological tests that 20% of CEOs are likely clinically sociopaths. Now, we tend to think of sociopaths like Ted Bundy, serial killers.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, a certain percentage of them kill people, but the majority of sociopaths don't. They just don't have a conscience. So I think that's what you need when you're cheating is usually, I mean, you're going to get religious people are going to think, well, God's going to get me for this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not religious, but I look at it and say, it's just, no, I feel wrong. I feel like I've done something wrong.
Right.
I find $10. I saw that guy drop that chip or that bill. I'm going to give it back to him. It's not mine.
Yeah.
And it isn't really a sense of you know, I'm going to go to jail or whatever. It's just my concept of what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I'd be a shitty CEO. But,
yeah, that's your last name isn't Carnegie.
yeah. I can't shut down that factory and put all those people out of work.
No.
Well, what are they going to do? How are they going to pay their bills? You know, and the CEO says, fuck them.
Yeah.
You know, that's more of a bonus for you. Well, no, I just don't work that way. I'm not wired like that.
That's major cheating. That's Enron level.
Yes.
That's beyond what we're talking about today.
Yes.
But we are talking about cheating today,
Yep.
John.
Yep.
On the Pod Bay Door, episode 74. We're inching towards 100.
Yep.
We're gonna have a giant party. I know we're gonna have that. But Pod Bay Door, if you would like to get a hold of us, our email is thepodbaydoorlv@gmail.com. We just launched on Spotify, so all of your smart devices and all of your TVs, hit those up. You can see us. All of your Alexas and Google Homes, just ask to play us, and she'll actually do it. And if you have a chance, if you're a subscriber to iTunes, we would love to get a couple of reviews from you. We'd love to hear from all of our fans and maybe not even fans, maybe people that disagree with everything John and I say. We'd love to hear that too. But love the reviews on iTunes. Check us out and give us a 5-star if you think we deserve it. Thanks a bunch to our monthly sponsor for this month, CWOdesigns.com. The custom woodworking, photography, and framing. They do a great job. I just saw something. They're doing firearms holders.
Oh.
Yes, beyond the controversy of having the firearm.
Yeah.
They have a lovely way of displaying them. So.
Oh, well, that's a work. So some of them are really works of art.
Yeah, if you love the NRA or don't, still you need something to hold the gun.
You know, I've got some swords, some Asian swords actually from Thailand. That I could probably use.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But CWOdesigns.com. Check those guys out. Also, Julia's not here today. She is working hard in her other industry. But check her book out on Amazon Kindle. It's Carved in Stone, a Vanessa Stone murder thriller. And all of the Kindle devices and Amazon, check that out. I believe if you're part of the Kindle Book Club, you can get that for free. If not, very reasonable. I believe it's like $1. Yeah, it's very great. Carved in Stone, a Vanessa Stone murder thriller. And a great announcement, kind of a teaser, sort of. The Pod Bay Door is actually beginning to produce several new podcasts, the first of which is going to come out within the next few weeks as soon as we get everything recorded and produced. But the first one is entitled The Invisible Maybe. Now, John is accredited for that particular title. If you would like to know what that is, I'm going to keep it a mystery. You can check in at theinvisiblemaybe.com. You can also, we just launched on iTunes, and there is a coming soon teaser trailer on there. Check it out, The Invisible Maybe, and it's going to be discussions on everything that people like to talk about now, not specifically by region, but health, fitness, entertainment, society, and most importantly, we're going to have a little segment called, I'm not sure what we're going to call it, but I'm going to call it today, Things That Work, Things That Don't Work. So it's The Invisible Maybe. Hopefully, when you listen to it, you'll be able to get some brand new information and maybe even change your mind. But theinvisiblemaybe.com. Check that out. John, we're talking about cheating. Now, I have purposefully gotten 13 ways to cheat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 'cause I like
cheating just in general?
Cheating in the casinos. Some of these involve the dealer participation. Some of them are just the players. There are no specific order, but I know that a lot of our listeners and fans talk about that, and they wanted me to have a cheating special because I opened my big mouth, 4 or 5 podcasts ago and said we're going to do it. Well, we're going to do it. Here we go.
Right.
We got some cheating.
All right.
John and I don't cheat.
No, have you
Yeah.
ever cheated on anything?
I haven't. And you mentioned like money or chips falling out of a guy's pocket. I'm quick to return it to the guy.
Yeah.
Because I would hope people do the same. It's hard earned. It's not like you're competing against him. It just fell out of the poor guy's pocket, No, I can't say that I did. I mean, maybe playing a game as a kid, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting in Japan. Here, I mean, it's different. If you find, let's say you're walking down the street, you find a $10 bill just laying there in the gutter, and you pick it up. Well, I found $10. Put it in your pocket, and that's it. That's you found $10.
Right.
Doesn't belong to anybody. In Japan, they call that stealing. They'll say that, oh, I had $10. So, well, what happened? Well, I dropped it because I was drunk, and it landed, somewhere between my house and the train station, or the train station and my house.
Right.
And I went back and I looked everywhere and it was gone. Well, I don't think that was stolen.
Yeah.
But yeah, you will see that in Japan. If there is a bill on the ground, 1,000 yen, which is $10 or something,
okay.
no one will pick it up.
Really?
Yeah, they'll leave it there because whoever owns it might come back for it.
See, that is a social experiment that would...
Yes, and the wind will blow it and say, well, how do you know it's not going to be there? I better pick it up for him. I'll hold it in my pocket. How's that?
Yeah.
And then I'll invest it for him also.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes, yeah.
Now, is it a law that they? I mean, is it
basically
on
just
the
a
books
moral law? Because I remember I had somebody tell me that they had their wallet stolen. So I was curious to hear this story.
Yeah.
And no, they went into a phone booth. That's how long ago this was. This was in the 80s. And they left it there.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. They'd gone into a phone booth to make a call, and they set the wallet. And then when they went back, it was gone.
Yeah.
So they went to the police box, as they call it, which is the Koban, the little police station,
Uh-huh.
and nobody had turned it in. That meant there was a thief.
Oh,
I thought, well, if you don't have any ID in it, somebody, I mean, here thinking, that, just different perspective.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, these are cheating efforts that are made within the casinos.
All right.
First one, it has to deal with craps. It's dice switching.
Yeah.
You can imagine what that is.
Yeah.
Very difficult to do the mechanics of it, to actually switch the dice. You have to be of a certain caliber of cheat to get those dice switched, because it's very difficult, especially when they feed you 5 dice out of a little bowl. And then you pick 2, and they want that you don't really make a big hoopla about picking the 2. You pick the 2. The stick man takes the rest of the dice back, puts them in the bowl next to the boxman, and then you pick them up and do whatever little lucky thing that you do. You can't palm them. You have to keep them invisible at all times. But at some point between then and when the stick man pushed the dice out, you switch them.
Yeah.
Now, that's really not the most difficult part. The most difficult part is, of course, getting the dice exactly the same as the dice. And you have to have a confederate, usually within the dice-making company. And each pair of dice that are made in cases full are specific to the houses they're used in. For example, the Venetian has Venetian dice that are stamped and branded and weighted specifically. So it'll be very difficult, but it still happens. Some of these are old school, some of these aren't, but it definitely happens. Now, number 2 is something called chip sliding, and this really happens. This has to do with generally dealers. Dealers in Las Vegas, some of the older houses, very few of the newer ones, but they wear aprons, and they usually have the brand of the hotel on them. The Venetian did and does, I believe, still in the craps area. And the dealer would either very, very covertly put slits in it. He would tape a little pocket. He would sew a pocket. And basically slide the chip into this, and at the end of his either shift or 20 minutes or 40 minutes that he's running, he'd grab a couple of chips. Usually, cheats, they usually stay between 25, 50, hundreds. 25, the greens. But that's chip sliding, and that's very common still today. Very difficult. And the eyes in the sky specifically look for that kind of thing. Dealers.
Yeah, I think people don't really understand how often the eyes in the sky are really looking at the workers. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes more so than the player.
More so.
Or even in the case of like talking about dice switching, it becomes easier, of course, if you have an inside inside job,
Exactly.
right? If the accomplice is the boxman or whomever, somebody's working there.
Right. No, exactly. And most of these involve, the teaming up.
Yeah.
A crew. They call them crews here.
Yeah.
They still do. Number 3, the false shuffle, which anybody that plays poker of any type, either house games or whatnot, you're talking cold deck low, cold deck high. Basically, in a casino, the false shuffle is you're trying to end up with cards on the top or the bottom, usually the top or the middle, and it looks as if you've shuffled, but you didn't. And the cards are just waiting there for a confederate. So that's a false shuffle. Little less possible now. There are some places still in Las Vegas that have a 2-deck pitch.
Yeah.
I honestly can't speak on a single deck pitch anymore. It's rare, very rare, and it would be a tiny house. But those are really big about false shuffles. I love this one because it just happened. It's called pass posting. Now, pass posting, of course, for all of you race fans out there, is something that is used as a cheat for horse racing, and that's usually having knowledge of the race before or after it's done, and then somehow getting the bet down at a different time frame. But pass posting for
in the Sting.
It is in the Sting, yes. Yeah. Great film. But roulette pass posting. Basically all that is a version of capping your bet, which is also on the list. We have a Charles Oakley, the famous basketball player, just
got nailed for that.
Got nailed for that at the Cosmopolitan again. Cosmo seems to be the epicenter for all these controversies. But basically, pass posting is during roulette, you either after the dealer has waved off the table, which means that you cannot place any bets, or prior to the marker going out, or just as the ball lands, you cap your bet, you place a bet, you do anything with knowledge that the ball's landed. And usually there's a brief moment when the dealer is not looking at the players. He has to mark the ball, he has to mark the table. And that's what happens. So they and that's what Charles Oakley did, apparently. Now, you know what? I didn't follow the story all the way through. Was he formally arrested?
I don't know. I didn't hear that either. I just knew that he was involved. But again, there you go. Somebody who's at the higher end of the pay scale, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if he's broke, if he pulled a MC Hammer there and ruined all of his money. But Charles Oakley for sure. The next one, number 5, hidden camera. And they've been using this more and more because cameras are so easily gotten, like GoPros. But these are like pinhole cameras, little tiny ones, fiber optic, and they use them in baccarat to mark the shuffle. And so basically, there's someone on the other end of the camera digitally that is, and the guy has the camera out of his sleeve or coming through the sleeve, and the shuffle is being watched, and that's how the baccarat players make their bets. Baccarat is a relatively simple game. You're either going for you or the dealer, and knowing shuffle is a really good thing. So that's apparently a thing now. A huge problem are these fiber optic cameras. So again, baccarat, big bac, is usually not for the faint of heart. It's usually for men with lots of money. And so again, rich people, they're cheating.
They're the ones who are cheating. Yeah.
Number 6. Card switching, and that's an easy one. It's also called hand mucking. It's a pretty simple thing. I mean, you're switching the cards. You have an ace up your sleeve. That's what it is.
Yeah, and that's really where it comes from. And what's really interesting, if you look back at old gambling books that talk about a holdout, which would basically deliver those cards to you, would do the switch for you. They're still used, and there's a local magician here in Las Vegas, Bob Kohler, who makes a very high-end, very expensive one for entertainment purposes, for magicians to use. In fact, it's unusual because he doesn't sell it; he leases it. So you pay a couple $1,000s for you to be able to use this, but you just can't sell it to anybody else you want to. When you're done with it, it belongs to him, basically. So that was interesting. But yeah, a lot of the methodologies that gamblers used, or for cheaters, are used by sleight of hand card guys.
Yeah, card mechanics. I
Yes.
mean, you know, it's John and I have spoken often on the podcast of Ricky J.
Yeah.
Now, I it may be, you know, an insulting moniker for him, but he is a world class.
Oh, he is world class,
top tier mechanic.
Yeah.
And you know, but he's also an entertainer, great actor. Yeah,
yes, and good. And if you ever get a chance to see he did a special on HBO years ago. It's still wonderful if you can find it. It's Ricky J and his 52 assistants.
Oh, it's
and
magical.
Because Ricky J is also a scholar.
Yeah.
And there's a really interesting, a great read, was a book called The Magician and the Card Sharp. And a really famous sleight of hand magician of the 20th century, Di Vernon, learned a lot of techniques from a book written called The Expert at the Card Table. It's still in print, by S.W. Erdnase. No one has ever been able to find out who S.W. Erdnase was. They think it was a pseudonym. His name might have been Andrews, and he just used, but nevertheless, they never to find out who this guy was.
Really?
But it was the basis of really pretty much all modern sleight of hand with cards. So Di Vernon learned, dealing off the top, or second deals, as they're called, from this dealing the second card or the bottom deal. But he'd heard about a guy who could do the elusive middle deal. It almost seems impossible. How do you deal from the middle of the deck? Right. And it catalogs where he'd heard about this guy, and he went searching for him in Kansas, looking for the guy who dealt from the middle of the deck. And of course, you can imagine that this is knowledge that the mechanic doesn't like to get let out, any more like a spy. Yeah. They don't want other people to know that they're cheating. Right, that they're a cheater. They appear that they're not, so they don't want other people to know that they have this skill.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, but if you guys get a chance, anything Ricky J does, whether it's in print or on video, you need to catch it. It's fantastic. That was hand mucking or card switching, a version of that. Number 7, I don't have many. In fact, I think I have one that deal with machines, because machines are changing and have changed. Yeah. It's very difficult. However, there's a new one called. It is a mocked bill validator, and basically it's hidden in a $100 or a $1 bill, and it is 2 contact points that mocks a $100 bill. So you put it in, and the validator reads it as 100, and therefore it gives you credit for $100. And it's 2 little strips, and they hide it with a $1 bill or a $100 or whatever bill, and they slide it in there, and it works. It used to be they used to use light wands. Way back in the day, they used to, have a coin with a hole and a string.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
They wouldn't let it drop in the hopper.
Right.
But the light wands, of course, would go up and inside, and it was sort of an infrared, light thing that it would fool the machine. But now these bill validators, it's interesting
how they have technology. I mean, technology evolves, and then there's always some way of using that technology for either cheating or to thwart the cheating, and then there's next evolution of technology comes that'll offset the.
Absolutely. I always love the combat between. I mean, I always love to hear about good hackers.
Yeah.
With all the like the Microsoft scams going on nowadays. Like apparently there's a whole group of good hackers.
Yeah.
That are.
They're in town today. I saw that on the news.
Yeah, that's
Black
true.
Hat.
Yeah, the Black Hat people. All right.
I saw something recently. It's about $500. It's a deck of cards that has an RFID chip in each card. You can't tell it's in there.
Right.
But if you select a card, whatever card you chose, I can find out what that is because it'll send an electric pulse. Nice. And then I can read the pulses.
Oh, that's
so a lot of these cheating techniques were used originally, of course, in private games, and they still would work. I mean, you can't ring in a deck of cards like that into a casino. But nevertheless, of course, if the dealer is crooked, they could possibly do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for the average person getting bilked, it's the private game.
Yeah. Absolutely. That was number 7. Now, number 8 is something John mentioned earlier: card counting. And I will answer the big question, which has been answered a million times, I think, by movies and scholars and everything else. Yes, it is legal.
Yeah.
It is highly and vehemently and viciously frowned upon here in Vegas. You're not going to exist long as a card counter. There have been very famous crews, MIT, Kevin Spacey's film, and so on and so forth, that have been successful, but very briefly. But it is legal, and like John said, it's a moral dilemma. I think you're just giving yourself the advantage mathematically, which it's all it is.
Yeah.
Now to be a card counter for a 6-deck mechanically distributed shoe, that's impressive.
Yeah.
That's impressive regardless. But yeah, it's legal, but don't do it. Especially if you're just going to pick up some hints on the internet and then come in here and try to count cards. A, it's not easy. But B, don't do it. They are watching, that kind of thing. Number 9, again, we're back to everybody working together. If John is the dealer and I'm the player, and then we have a confederate behind John or in front of John, whole card reading. That's very popular still. You look for weak dealers. Again, that's a really big movie plot. You try to find the weak dealer that has a bad look under his cards. And you'll find them. I mean, dealers get lazy. It's tough dealing that all day. But whole card reading is still something people try to do. Number 10, dice sliding. People. I've actually seen people try to do this, and they're not very bright. And they sometimes they do it and it's accidental because it can happen. But dice sliding is, of course, in craps. And you are to launch the dice, at a reasonable height, so they bounce and wobble and do everything else, so it is a valid roll. A lot of people, they will try to slide the dice down, or a version of it where there's like very little bounce to no bounce at all. But a good box person and a good set of dealers, they're going to call that a no roll. But dice sliding is a big deal. And dice sliding doesn't mean you switch the dice. You're just trying to, get that 8.
Yeah.
Number 11, this is the one I love the most. I think this is it's so simple. And honestly, it was relatively new to me. Roulette color-up scheme. Yeah. So in roulette, you buy in for $100 in chips. And you can request a color of the chips. There's I believe there's 8 different colors it can have at any given time. Let's say I want pink. So I get pink, and I buy in for dollar chips. Okay, so every one of my pink chips, the dealer knows I bought in, and they are $1. Well, you save some in your pocket. You squirrel them away, 10 or so. And then you give them to the next guy, who then buys in, and these chips are now worth $25. And he introduces the same color that you got.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Very, very illegal.
Yeah,
it is absolutely cheating. But I thought that was an interesting one. Honestly, there are versions of that, I guess, but I'd never heard of it in that basic version. That's amazing.
It seems to me that evolved from a scam my dad used to tell me that he used to run in the Navy with a couple of guys, and they'd be on leave. And they'd find some diner that was really busy, and they would go in there, and one of them would order a hot dog, and the other one would order a steak, and then they would ask for put it on one bill. I'm sorry, one guy would order 2 hot dogs, and the other guy would order the steak.
Okay.
So they would get separate checks. Well, there was often a separate cashier. You didn't give the money to the server at that time. Mm-hmm. So then what they do is they take the check for the steak and they just throw that away, and they go to the counter and they got one bill for 2 hot dogs. So then they would go down a different diner and then they would switch. So the other guy who had the steak would now order the 2 hot dogs. And then the other guy who had to eat the 2 hot dogs got the steak. And they would pull the same scam. So they get out there and they would pay for the hot dogs, which were each, $1.50 or something like that.
Right.
And then they would pay for those, but they wouldn't pay for the steak.
I gotcha. All right.
So it kind of sounds like almost the same sort of thing, where you're ringing in the different, but with colors and the values. Yeah.
But no, I thought that was very clever and so simple. Number 12, card marking. Now back to John's thing. The pinnacle of card marking, of course, is having embedded RFIDs. But it's as simple as fingernail marking is almost impossible nowadays. But you tape a portion of a razor blade to your finger and mark it. There's color marking, with unseen ink. blacklight kind of thing. But honestly, that's a really antiquated thing.
Yeah.
It's rare to see a mark. Again,
Yeah.
though, it calls for a team, a crew.
Yeah, there are different ways of crimping the card that you can tell at a distance what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I even learned that as a kid with an old deck of cards, playing games. One of the cards would have gotten cut or something like that just accidentally, or was discolored.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew, I said, oh, that's the 8 of hearts. I could tell from behind. So in that way, it was kind of marked. I used to get asked a lot whether magicians use like marked decks. I said, no, there's much easier ways for them to know what card you selected through sleight of hand than trying to read the back of a card, because you can see those at a lot of novelty stores will sell a full deck of cards that are marked, and you have to look at the different little flowers on the design and count. Okay, wait a minute. No, there are a lot easier ways. No one's going to stand there and you have to stare at it and kind of figure it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, last one, number 13, lucky 13, is capping your bet. So I mentioned it earlier. Capping your bet is basically adding to the stack of chips or subtracting from it, but it's generally adding. You're going to add to a winning hand. And a lot of people try to do that on, like, when you split tens or aces or whatever you split on a blackjack table. That's when it gets complex, especially when a particular casino allows multiple splitting. Then you can start capping, and all that is just basically squirreling a chip in the palm of your hand, or however you do it. Some people aren't very subtle. And you wave that hand over your chips. Maybe that's a lucky move of yours, and you drop that chip down on there. That's called capping your bet. Still a very common thing to do. I have actually seen people do it just naturally. I don't really play very often, but when I do, I watch people, and I'm very curious about their methods of playing and what's lucky to them and not. But I have seen that people try to do that, and the reaction is usually, oh, don't do that, and then if it continually happens, they'll be asked to leave. But it's definitely cheating, definitely going to get you kicked out.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, no, as far as gambling, John, my experience in gambling, as far as a consumer of gambling, I don't, every little dollar is painful. So I've had fun here and there. Like I said, nothing like a great craps game, especially if you get a cute little girl that's on a roll. Roulette is fun if you know that you're just going to end up, if you end up pushing, that's perfect. You've had a great evening. Pie Gal, you could spend, oh my God, 24 hours on $20 if you're careful in Pie Gal. But cheating, nah, never even thought about it. Never even thought about it. How about you?
No, never crossed my mind.
Do you gamble much?
Nope, not at all.
Not at all.
No,
Have you?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. What was your game? What did you enjoy, I guess?
Blackjack.
Yeah.
Yeah,
really?
yeah. But again, it's like trying to find a single deck blackjack, because again, it's the idea of the shoe. Just to me, I says no. That's unfair.
Yeah.
I don't want to see. What do you mean? I got 2 8 of hearts here. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because when I first learned to play blackjack, and I was just a teenager, I start to realize then is, well, wait a minute. I can basically count these cards, and I can see that there have been very few deuces and trays have been played. There have been a lot of court cards, so therefore there must be quite a few left in there. I've got 16. I'm going to hit, because I know that that's normally not a good bet, but sure enough, it turns up a 4. How did you know? You got lucky? No, not quite.
Yeah.
I was keeping track. I was keeping track of the cards, what was being played.
There you go. Yeah, careful. Yeah. But I have to take a brief moment for a little I told you so.
Yeah.
Not to you, to our listeners and generally the town. There's an article came out about yesterday about the MGM Resorts International, which are the owners of a majority of the strip now, along with Caesars and Harrah's.
Yeah.
Well, I've been saying that the marketing of Vegas is so well done and so cryptic that people don't know when it's truly hurting. Now, I'm not saying it's going to just roll over and turn into a dust bowl like it does in every zombie film, but it is hurting. And we are hurting as a town as far as the industry is concerned, and this article sort of meets that out. The MGM reported that they are lowering the room rates, which is almost unheard of. Yeah. And this is after charging for parking, charging for drinks, all the other, and the resort fees going through the roof. They're going to lower the cost of each room because they are expecting an even more disastrous fourth quarter. Now, third quarter was 41% decline in gaming, and they're expecting even more in the fourth.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a very telling fact. Now, I'm not wanting this to happen. People misunderstand that. But people have to realize that things they are a-changing. And when we speak ill of the millennials and speak ill of the generations that are coming, they are influential because they do not have the disposable income that John's generation, that my generation did.
Yeah, and also they're not taught the games. I mean, I was taught these games. My dad, and it was a big deal for us at that time living in the Bay Area. They would go to Reno. That was closer than Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. Of course, Las Vegas was the Mecca. That's where everybody wanted to go. But Reno was it was 3-hour drive or 3-4 hours. You could drive there, and it was fun. But yeah, they would save up their money. They came back. If somebody had silver dollars, I knew they'd been to Reno. Yeah. Whether it was slot machines or table games, whatever it was, I learned how to play those games. And then at some point, we had talked earlier on one of the podcasts about Faro.
Yes.
It was a game. It was at one time really, really popular, and then it lost out to poker. And now nobody plays Faro anymore. It's an extinct game, more or less. It's an ancient game. Yeah. So a lot of these other games, maybe the same thing's going to happen. Who are really playing the games when you go there? Are they younger people? Probably not. They're going to be people 40 and over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we John and I are big supporters of the town. It's a fantastic town to live in. But I think there needs to be some reality checks as far as what's going on in our town. There are some major changes that are both positive and negative, leaning towards the negative. I haven't decided about the Raiders. Raiders are what is causing all of the changes because everybody is sort of buffering, what they're going to do as far as the crowds that are supposedly going to come in for the Raiders. That being said, our gaming is still going down, not because of the Raiders, but because, as John said, our consumerism for generations below us is changing drastically. Drastically. They're not buying homes, they're not buying cars, they're not buying clothes. It's so strange. And I think Las Vegas is in a very quiet tailspin because they don't know what to do, and it'll be very interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, for a while they survived pretty well by, for example, they introduced the shopping and the restaurants, which in the early days they didn't have. When I first came here to Las Vegas in 1981, I think, when I was just 21, the restaurants sucked. I mean, around you could find a few that were out and about that were well known. Some of them that at the Golden Steer, Piero's, maybe restaurants like that. But the number was pretty low, and of course the buffets were known as being cheap.
Oh yeah, they were loss leaders.
Yeah, they were. They were cheap. They weren't necessarily very good, but they didn't cost you anything. So you got what you pay for. But nevertheless, they were. And now, yes, you can get a great buffet, and it's going to cost you $50.
Yeah, it's shocking.
It is.
It's shocking to those of us that have been here so many years.
Yeah.
But there you go. Cheating.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Don't.
It's just silly.
You're gonna get caught.
You're gonna get caught, and you're gonna. Yeah, I always think of the description of the cheaters that had tried to steal money from Ocean's 11. That's the greatest scene to me when the guy almost made it out of the casino and they shot him in the Caesars Fountain area.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
But that's gonna be your end. Don't try to cheat. Las Vegas will catch you. Well, thanks everybody for listening. If you want to get a hold of us or have any questions, we're going to talk more about cheating. I'm going to get we're going to get some old school cheating. All that's kind of new, but we'll get some old school cheating for a new segment. But if you have any questions about today or any of our shows, our email is thepodbaydoorlv@gmail.com. You can catch us on Spotify, iTunes, and all of your favorite podcast places. Thanks to our sponsor, CWOdesigns.com, for custom woodwork and photography and framing. They do a fantastic job. Hello to Julia, and catch her book on Amazon Kindle. It's Carved in Stone, a Vanessa Stone murder thriller that is going to be a series. So catch number 1 right now on Amazon. And as I said earlier, go to our newest podcast from the Pod Bay Door Network, It is the invisible maybe. Now, I'm keeping it cryptic because it's a really cool concept. You need to go to theinvisiblemaybe.com. You can pre-subscribe to us right there and catch all of the upcoming content. We're all of the social networks we're going to be on. In fact, we're on right now if you want to say hello real quick. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and so on, but theinvisiblemaybe.com for a new podcast by the Pod Bay Door Network. For John, this is Jamey, and we will see you next week. Thanks to everyone listening and watching. You can catch the Pod Bay Door on the Podbean app or any of your favorite podcast apps, including iTunes, Google Play, TuneIn, and Stitcher Radio. You can watch the show on our YouTube channel at the Pod Bay Door Podcast. Please download, like, and subscribe. Our social connectivity screen is coming up. Check in with us on Facebook, Twitter, and WordPress. The Pod Bay Door is closed and talent is out. Hey everybody, thank you very much for tuning into the show. We would love to hear your show suggestions and comments. If you are watching on our YouTube channel, please click to subscribe. You can also connect with us on Facebook using @PBD Podcast, on Twitter using @TPBD Podcast, and on WordPress at thepodbaydoor.wordpress.com.